Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This is Rachel Lang. I am a professional astrologer and astrological consultant, and I'm coming to you today from the capital of California, from Sacramento. Before I get started with my meetings today, I wanted to take a few moments and shine some light on what's happening in the US, and in particular, what is the deal with Trump and Greenland and Denmark. And also, we'll take a few moments and look at the US relationship with NATO. Lots happening right now in the world. And we knew this was going to be a year full of discussions about war and peace and military activity. And so here it is. We are in the middle of it. And this week, I'm recording this on January 20th. This week is so important because it sets us up for the Neptune moving into Aries on January 26th. The days between January 21st and January 27th feature highly unstable energies. And if there is going to be any escalation, then we're likely to see it as the Sun and Mars both meet up with Pluto. So take a deep breath. We are going to get into the astrology of this moment so that you can find out not just what's happening, but why it's happening and how it's a part of the bigger picture, the bigger unfolding story. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at Donald Trump's chart because he's the instigator of chaos right now. And there are signatures in his chart that relate to health issues. The last couple of years, I've talked about the very real potential of a major mental health decline, whether through Alzheimer's or dementia. It's right there in his chart. Also, his behavior is showing that this is a very real possibility. And it's one that I think we all need to consider. Those eclipses in February 17th, March 3rd, and then again in September, those eclipses are intense periods of time for him, and they activate different points in his chart. Also, he was born on a lunar eclipse, and so when we have lunar eclipses, that's a lunar phase return for him. And usually big things happen in our lives. You might notice this too when the lunar phase that you were born under happens. Big things happen in our lives when we have that lunar phase return, especially if you're born on an eclipse. So I want to show you the chart for this moment. If you're unfamiliar with looking at a chart this way, let me guide you through it. This wheel right here, the very first inner wheel, is the natal chart. This wheel, the middle wheel, is the progressed chart, and they use secondary progressions. There are lots of ways you can advance a chart, but I like secondary progressions. I also take into consideration several different timing techniques. But for simplicity's sake today, we are just going to look at secondary progressions and the transits. And the transits are the planets in the heavens today and how they relate to his chart. And that is the outer wheel right here. When we're talking about progressions show the subtle shifts of consciousness, of life events and circumstances that take shape over time. There's usually a buildup with progressions. The progressions show us what is the soul's urge at this time based on what it was at the time of birth. And a few things stand out to me. First of all, the progressed midheaven is conjunct his natal Pluto. Anytime the progressed angles are activating natal chart points or receiving outer planet transits, that is a signature that is associated with a big life change. Things that affect all areas of your life and that can snowball, where one change, one move affects your relationships, affects your career and reputation and how other people see you, and affects your personal life, your home life, and yourself, even your physical health. And when I look at his progressed midheaven, right there at 10 degrees Leo, right next to his natal Pluto, Pluto is a planet, it's a dwarf planet technically, but it's a planet that relates to endings and new beginnings. It also relates to power and influence. Midheaven is your reputation. It's how other people experience you, but it's also your calling. It's that crown chakra point within us that connects us in our daily lives to the spiritual purpose of our soul. And when the progressed midheaven is right next to Pluto, this tells me that there is a death of sorts that relates to his career and reputation, the way that he's been perceived in the public eye, and also to his sense of power and influence. In addition to that, he's got his progressed Mercury right there next to Mars. And when you have Mercury next to Mars, you have fighting words. When we look at the transits, a few things stand out. We see Uranus is a really strong player right now. It has been for the last year and a half. As it's been moving through the sector of his chart, Uranus was really active when he had the assassination attempts. Uranus shows that something out of the blue and unexpected could happen. Uranus is going to aspect, and it is aspecting, these points, the ascendant, Mercury, and Mars, and this mashup. Now, Uranus won't go back to those exact degrees, but it does square his ascendant on April 24th. And that is a time when, number one, his health is in crisis, especially with those March and February eclipses. Because when we look at the charts for those days, we see that eclipse at 28 Aquarius is opposing all of these points, entering into the aspect relationship with Uranus. It would not surprise me if we weren't seeing movements toward impeachment right in that 2 weeks between February 17th and March 3rd. This eclipse is very difficult for him, and it shows that a lot of his health issues are coming to the surface. I can't begin to tell you how significant this astrology is because it's happening just days before Saturn and Neptune meet up. And whenever we have two outer planets coming together like that, especially at that 0 degrees Aries point, we have a whole series of global shifts in our markets, in our alliances, in borders and boundaries, in ways that we can't even fathom right now. This kind of chaos that we're seeing is necessary for that Saturn-Neptune conjunction, whole new paradigm being born right now. And it's being created. And so we're watching a cycle that started in 1989 when Saturn and Neptune came together. We're watching that crumble. We're watching that come to an end. And there's a new paradigm that's starting. And so this moment is going to take us into the next 100 years, 160 years, because Neptune is just starting its whole new journey through the zodiac. So this is big. The last time Neptune was in Aries, it was the start of the Civil War. And look at where we are now. And some of those themes are still playing out, only now it just has a different look and feel. There's also one other chart point I wanted to show you because the symbolism is interesting and it adds some depth to this conversation. This is not the most significant influence at play. This doesn't have as much weight as a planet or an asteroid or an angle, but there are these Arabic lots or parts that we can use in astrology. We have the part of fortune. Many of you are familiar with that. You have the part of spirit, the part of eros. These all relate to different aspects of our lives. There are parts for just about anything you can imagine. There are parts for death by murder. There's a part of fame. There's a part of your sons or daughters. There's a whole list that if you start going down the rabbit hole, you're going to have a very interesting and enlightening time. Well, there's a part of the Heilig, which is the life giver. When we're talking about this point, we're talking about our vitality, our health, our life, or our life force energy. And this eclipse on March 3rd is right there activating that point. The astrological symbolism shows a potential for there to be a major health event or the loss of vitality in some way. The leader's chart shows what's happening in the country. And so this is a highly volatile time for the US. I'm going to shift gears now and talk about the astrology of NATO because we can see it at a major turning point right now and throughout the year. I'm centering this conversation on the astrology of April because April has a lot of volatile Aries energy. NATO's chart has a lot of Aries. It has that whole Aries stellium right there that you can see toward the right of the chart, which is the 8th and 7th houses. If you look to the 7th and 8th houses, you can see the Mars return and Saturn moving right over NATO's Mars. Saturn involves restructuring, and when we're talking about Mars, we're talking about boundaries, borders, we're talking about alliances, and also Mars represents the will of the organization, what they are willing to fight for, and how they are engaging in conflict. And Venus represents diplomatic relationships. Mercury is talking points. We have Saturn activating all of these points. Saturn is first going to move over NATO's Mercury. April 5th is when that's exact. Then it moves over Mars, which happens on May 16th. And then on May 25th, it moves over Venus. And then in September and October, it comes back again for a final round. This shows that there is a restructuring happening with alliances, with enemies. And when you have Saturn next to Mars, that can be a contentious influence where there is conflict, inner fighting, outer fighting. Do I think there's going to be a breakup of NATO? I don't particularly see that as the outcome. As the North Node moves into Aquarius in July and stays there for 18 months throughout 2027, I think we are going to be looking at a reimagining of it and a reworking of the terms of that original agreement. And coincidentally, Trump's Mars right here is conjunct NATO's Saturn. And so him being an instigator of that restructuring is a part of this astrological symbolism. Now I want to show you some highlights about the astrology of Greenland at this moment. And there are two charts for Greenland. The one I'm going to use is when it became an autonomous, self-governing country, and that's the chart for June 21st, 2009. Greenland's North Node is in Aquarius, and so there's so much about the people. It's moving away from those models of having one person in a position of power and having the power be to the people. And this conversation is happening again in a very powerful way with demonstrations and protests. And it's happening right as the Sun and Mercury are moving over that North Node, symbolically inviting Greenland to say, no, this is who we are. And the show of solidarity has been incredible. Also, I wanted to point out that transiting Neptune is headed toward the IC, that is that bottom of the chart, that point that relates to our rootedness. Also, it relates to land and territory. And so questions of who do we belong to and what is our home, these are all prevailing questions over the next couple of years while Neptune is moving over that point. Also, Neptune is in a challenging aspect with Greenland's sun. You see that square, it's almost exact right now. And when we're talking about a country's sun, we're talking about its leadership. And we're also talking about the overall health and vitality of a country. And Neptune is challenging it, but a square is more of an internal challenge. And so I'm optimistic that this is a threat that doesn't see any follow through in a way that would cause Greenland to lose its autonomy. Saturn is also challenging that square. And so I think we are going to be talking about negotiations, about money, rare earth minerals. This chart shows that there are threats, that Greenland itself is going through its own inner turmoil of how do we respond to this. I think Greenland's going to empower itself and push back in a way that shows successful outcomes. If we advance the chart and look at the astrology of 2027, we see transiting Uranus moving right over Greenland's moon. And that is power to the people. That is a revolution. It's what we're seeing in Iran right now, because transiting Uranus is moving right over Iran's moon. And so this is the people of Greenland uprising and pushing back. I could see a lot of incredible art and music and inventions coming out of Greenland and Denmark over the next several years. But between now and July of 2027, there's pressure. When we look at the chart for Denmark, we can see the emerging stages of revolutionary activity, and it's not turning against the current leadership. It's actually rallying in support of them, and it's all driven from the people. We're going to fast forward the chart to June because I wanted to show you that this is an ongoing storyline. Saturn meeting up with Mars. This happens in June 14th, and again in September 7th, and then again in 2027. But Saturn on Mars is a period of conflict, and so it shows that there's outside sources that are coming in to spark division, and that they're going to push back. But we also see transiting Uranus opposing Denmark's moon. The moon represents the voice of the people, and Uranus is the planet of revolution. It sparks change in a very big way, in a way that can sometimes result in demonstrations, rallies, protests. And the fact that we have Neptune very close to Saturn, we have Mars and Saturn, this is a Saturn return period for Denmark, there will be already a lot of discussion about laws, regulations, alliances, the ways that they protect their borders, perhaps even looking at allocating more resources to military operations. A lot of this is happening leading up to this moment, and this is the moment where the people are heard. Their voices resound. And operating in the background, Denmark is going through what's called a nodal reversal. The nodal reversal is when the north node is conjunct your south node, and the south node is conjunct the natal north node. And this happens every 18 and a half years. So we have our nodal return, which is usually a date with destiny. It's usually like something significant is taking shape that's helping us identify who we are and where we're going. And the nodal reversal is a time when we're questioning that. And sometimes there can be a mentor or a guide that comes into our lives right at that time to help usher us on path. When we're talking about a country, sometimes that can be an ally that shows up in a big way to support whatever it is you're moving toward. I think there are a number of possibilities of who that ally or that mentor could be for Denmark. But if we look at the chart for the relationship between NATO and Denmark, we see that there's a lot of emphasis on that Aries stellium in NATO and how it relates to Denmark's Saturn and Mars. NATO is either fighting for Denmark and putting up stronger boundaries of protection, or they're fighting with them. And this could be symbolic of a larger rift that we looked at when we looked at the chart for April's astrology and how it played out in NATO's chart. Interestingly, France has some oppositions with those points because France's chart features the Sun, Mercury, and Venus all in Libra, the Sun and Mercury both opposing Denmark's Mars. And so I think there could be some disagreements between these two countries about how to proceed. And the chart for the UK also shows involvement in this because of the UK's Venus, which is its diplomatic relationships, being right there next to Denmark's Saturn. That showing restructuring diplomatic relationships is a strong possibility. Altogether, we're looking at a period of intense instability for these countries, for NATO, and for really for the world. I said at the start of 2026 that there was a real possibility that there could be a World War III this year. Given the astrology of 2026, we're in the middle of three astrological cycles that we had at other times during major world wars, revolutionary wars, even the Civil War in the US. So that potentiality is there, and I think we need to be real about it. At the same time, I think we can be optimistic because that Saturn-Neptune conjunction shows that we are entering a whole new paradigm, a whole new way of thinking about ourselves, our world, our relationships, the countries that we're living in, everything. And so this is in so many ways a threshold moment, a cosmic reset. And I think many of you watching this are looking at how can we prevent that from happening. And I think the best way is to continue to stand up, to continue to go to demonstrations and rallies, to continue writing your representatives, to do everything you can in your world to advocate for peaceful outcomes. And I love the monks walking across America for peace right now. I think that symbolism is so powerful at this moment when there's so much global unrest. It's such a powerful reflection for all of us of what we can do. We don't need to have a whole lot of money or influence or a big social media reach to make a difference. We can work within our capacity, using our skills, operating within our own bandwidth to begin starting conversations that push us toward the creation of a new paradigm. The paradigm, the world that we deeply desire to have, that we will be proud to leave behind to future generations. And all of this is happening right now. This is a turning point. And so anything that you're doing, step up just a little bit more. Get more involved in your community. Do just a little bit more. Whoa, that's so wild. Zoom gave me some fireworks about that. So there you go. I think that's all I need to say. We'll end on that note. What kinds of questions do you have? What do you want to know? Let me know, and I'll keep creating this content for you so that you can stay engaged, informed, and inspired